Every single real estate video that you're going to see about Cape Coral is going to show you the things that we absolutely love. The canals, the sunsets, the dolphins swimming through the backyard. And here's the thing, they're not wrong. We live that lifestyle, but they are incomplete. So today, I'm going to tell you the things that most agents, including the ones trying to sell you a house here, are not going to tell you. Most people find Cape Coral the same way. They see the price tags, waterfront homes at a fraction of what they'd pay in Naples or Sarasota. They see the canal out back and they think this is it. This is the Florida dream. And I get it. I've been there. And look at me today. I live here. We sell here. We love this city. But here's what I watched happen over and over again for people. People fall in love with the highlight reel. They move down here, and 6 months later, reality hits. Not because Cape Coral is bad, it isn't, but because nobody sat them down and said, hey, here's what Tuesdays actually look like here. That's this video. So hi, I'm Jami Kolev. My husband Vic and I run the Kolev Group here in Southwest Florida, and we've worked with buyers relocating from all over the country. We were a relocation ourselves. And over the years, we've come to realize there's some things people just don't find out about Cape Coral until they move here. So we're going to cover 7 things here. What the canal system actually means when you're buying a home, why Cape Coral doesn't look like a planned city, and why that matters more than you'd actually think, the real difference between North Cape and South Cape, a financial assessment that blindsides buyers in North Cape called the UEP, who this city is actually built for and whether or not you're on that list, the downtown question, and finally, the ones that locals almost always want to share, the difference between Cape Coral in season and Cape Coral in the summer. So stay with me. Cape Coral has more than 400 miles of canals. I'm sure you're not shocked by that because if you've been doing any research on Cape Coral, that number has come up. It's more than any city in the world. But there are a few things that number doesn't tell you. First of all, there's 2 different types of canals, freshwater and saltwater, as we call them shorthand. About half of the canals are freshwater. That means they are landlocked. They do not connect to the Gulf of Mexico. They actually connect to lakes and drainage basins. The other half, or the saltwater, as we refer to it, are actually brackish water. They're a mix of both salt and fresh. This mixed water comes from fresh water that's coming from the Caloosahatchee River and salt water that is coming from the Gulf of Mexico, brought in with the tides. But the real distinction in the canals isn't about salinity, it's actually about the access. There are 3 different canal tiers that you need to know about. The first one is called direct access. So the boat goes from your backyard dock straight to the Gulf of Mexico. No bridges, no limitations, no locks. Because of that, it's often referred to as sailboat access. This is the premium tier and it is priced accordingly, especially in South Cape. Next up, you have indirect access. These types of canals do make it out to the Gulf, but there's a bridge between you and open water. So depending on your boat's clearance height, this can range from a minor inconvenience to a complete deal breaker. And then of course you have your freshwater canals. Beautiful views, kayaking, paddleboarding, freshwater fishing, but your boat does not get to leave the neighborhood. So when a client tells me they want a canal home, the first thing I ask is, what do you actually want to do on the water? Because that answer completely changes which homes we're looking at and what price range we're working with. The price gap between a direct access home and a freshwater canal home in Cape Coral can definitely be substantial. And if you don't know the difference going in, you can either overpay for access you don't need or end up on a landlocked lot wondering why the boat never moves. The canal is on the listing for both. The access level is in the details. The canals aren't the only thing in Cape Coral that looks one way from the outside and turns out to be something completely, entirely different once you actually are here. Let me show you what I mean. Here's something that surprises almost every out-of-state buyer who has never visited Cape Coral yet. Cape Coral does not look like a planned development. And I mean that very literally. The city was originally developed in the late 1950s and 60s by the Brosen brothers, who platted out roughly 110,000 lots and sold them. often through mail order campaigns, to people up north who had never stepped foot in Florida. People bought lots, sat on them for decades, and built whenever they wanted to, which means there was no phased development, no architectural review board enforcing a neighborhood aesthetic, no requirement that your neighbor build at the same time you did or the same height you did. So on the ground, you can be standing on a street in Cape Coral and on your 1964 concrete block home that hasn't been touched since it was built. On your right is a brand new $2.2 million contemporary build with a pool, an outdoor kitchen, and a 3-car garage. Same street, same block, no HOA, no design standards enforced. Now, for some buyers, this is liberating because there's no HOA telling you what color to paint your house or your fence. For others, it takes some getting used to. That was me. And either way, you need to know it before you get here, because if you're expecting the curated look of a master planned community, Cape Coral is going to look very different from what you imagined. This also means that in certain parts of the city, land value and home values can vary dramatically within a very short distance. It's part of what makes Cape Coral an interesting market to navigate. There are hidden gems on streets that don't photograph well, and there are overpriced homes on the streets that look great in the listing. Knowing the city block by block is how you find the former. Now, that scattered organic development pattern is also the reason Cape Coral has two halves that feel genuinely different from each other. And if you're buying here, which half you land in matters a lot. Cape Coral is a big city. We've got nearly 120 square miles, which makes it the second largest city in Florida by land area. And within that footprint, Pine Island Road acts as the unofficial dividing line between the two very different experiences you're going to have. South of Pine Island Road is the established part of Cape. Older, denser, more infrastructure, more amenities within reach, more canal front inventory. And then north of Pine Island is the growth frontier. Newer construction, lower prices, more open lots, and a city that in many areas is still being built out. South Cape tends to have more direct access canal homes, walkable proximity to the things that you like, established commercial corridors on Cape Coral Parkway and Del Prado, and prices that reflect all of that. North Cape tends to have more affordable new construction, larger lots, more privacy, a newer build stock that appeals to families who want modern finishes without the price tag of the South. But there is a trade-off. North Cape in many areas is still running on private wells and septic systems rather than city water and sewer. Which brings us to the thing I want to talk about next, because it is the financial surprise that catches North Cape buyers completely off guard. So when it comes to South versus North, neither half is better, they just serve different buyers. South Cape is for people who want water access, maybe a little bit more walkability, established neighborhoods and amenities, and don't necessarily mind paying the premium for it. North Cape is for buyers who want a little bit more room, a little bit more square footage, newer construction, and they're comfortable being part of a city that's still basically coming online. What you can't do is buy in North Cape without understanding what still coming online actually costs you, though, which is exactly what we're going to be talking about right now, because there is a line item associated with buying in North Cape that most buyers don't find out until they're already under contract. Cape Coral's Utility Extension Project, or the UEP, is the city's long-running program to bring municipal water, sewer, and irrigation to parts of the North Cape that are still on private wells and septic systems. The logic behind it is solid. City utilities mean better water quality, less environmental impact from aging septic systems, and higher long-term property values. The catch is how it's paid for. Property owners in the affected areas receive a special assessment, and it's not a small number. These numbers can change, but here's what the numbers have looked like in the recent project phases. For a standard 10,000 square foot residential lot in the North 1 area, covering water, sewer, and irrigation, assessments have come in north of $32,000 to $35,000. And this comes in an upfront prepayment option. However, if you finance it over the default 30-year term at around 6.5% interest, you're looking at roughly $3,700 to $3,900 per year added to your property tax bill. And over the years, that adds up to a lot. And that's before connection costs and the cost of decommissioning your existing well or septic. The mayor of Cape Coral said publicly that a homeowner in a $300,000 home in an effective area could be paying more in UEP assessments than they pay in city taxes. So does this mean that you shouldn't buy in North Cape? Absolutely not. In many cases, the lower purchase price of a North Cape home actually offsets more than the assessment over time. And when the UEP hits your street, property values typically move up. But you have to know it's coming and you have to factor it into your real cost of ownership. That is exactly the kind of thing I walk through with every buyer before we ever set foot in a house in North Cape. The assessment doesn't show up in the listing price, it shows up in your first property tax bill. So the UEP, the north-south split, the canal tiers, the patchwork development, all of it connects back to the bigger question that I want to answer directly. Who is Cape Coral actually built for? Because depending on your answer, everything we've just covered either works in your favor or it doesn't. So as I mentioned before, Cape Coral was master planned in the late 1950s as a waterfront residential escape. It wasn't ever meant to be a city center or a transit hub. It was simply a place to put your boat in the water, live quietly, and stay out of the rush. Now, 60 plus years later, that DNA is still deeply embedded in how the city functions. And if you understand that going in, everything just makes more sense. But if you don't, a lot of things about Cape Coral are really going to frustrate you. So let me give you an honest picture of who does really well here. Of course, the retirees and semi-retirees who want boating, golf, sunshine, low crime, and a slower pace. Cape Coral is exceptional for this. Then you have those who want safe neighborhoods, good public schools, space, and room to breathe without paying the Miami prices. This city delivers. You've got remote workers who don't need to commute and want the Florida lifestyle at a price that still makes sense. Cape Coral is genuinely one of the best value plays in the state right now. Now, here's who struggle. Those who are chasing a walkable nightlife scene, cultural density, and a career ladder in a specialized industry. Cape Coral is a hard fit. The social infrastructure for that is still developing, and the commute question is real. Cape Coral has a walk score of 17. We've got 2 bridges that connect most of the city to Fort Myers, and during season, those bridges can turn a 10-minute drive into 40. The Fort Myers Cape Coral Metro has ranked among the most traffic congested mid-sized metros in the country. And sadly, there's no meaningful public transit. You gotta have a car, full stop. And that's not a complaint, it's the design. The city was built around the boat, not the bus. None of this is meant to be a deal breaker, but it is meant to be information. The question I ask every client is simple. What does your ideal Tuesday look like? If the answer involves anything with a boat, a fishing pole, a coffee break on a dock, dinner somewhere local, you are going to love it here. And if the answer involves walking to work, subway access, and a rooftop bar on a Wednesday, we should probably talk about Fort Myers or something closer to a city core. Now, if you're in the I'm seriously considering this phase, we put together a free Cape Coral relocation guide that breaks down everything. The link is in the description, so go grab it. Now, we have talked about what the water is, how the city is built, where the two halves differ, what the UEP costs, and who this place is designed for. Now let's talk about something that trips up a lot of people that are coming from bigger cities, and that is a real downtown. Cape Coral doesn't have a dense, walkable downtown the way that Fort Myers does, or even some of the smaller Gulf Coast towns. But that isn't a failure of planning, it's just an outcome of the city design. Because remember, this was built to be a residential waterfront community, not an urban center. So the infrastructure followed the residential lots. With that said, it comes as a surprise to most people that we do indeed have a downtown. But if you blink, you'll miss it. It is right off Cape Coral Parkway as you come over the Cape Coral Parkway Bridge. And it is host to tons of restaurants, shopping, and entertainment. And they have actually been developing more dining and entertainment options over the last several years. And they have genuine character. Now, you're not in a walkable downtown grid, but everything down there is pretty walkable and accessible. So for buyers who came specifically for the residential waterfront lifestyle, the ones who want the boat out back, the quiet street, the community that feels like a neighborhood instead of a city, this is a feature, not a bug. They're not looking for some massive downtown. They want a little bit more mom, pop, homey feeling. But for buyers who are looking for more walkable urban energy as part of their daily life, this is a real gap. And I'd rather you know it now before you're living here wishing the scene was different. Now, I want to close with something that I genuinely believe is the most underreported truth about living in Cape Coral. And if you've only ever visited during season, or if you've never been here at all, this is going to be one that reframes everything. If you visited Cape Coral between November and April, you've experienced just one version of this city, and that is season. High season runs from January through March. The snowbirds are here, the restaurants have a wait, the bridges are backed up, the boat ramps are busy at sunrise. The traffic on Pine Island Road and Veterans Parkway move like it doesn't want to. The population swells, the energy spikes, and the whole city feels like it's operating at maximum capacity. Again, that's season. And a lot of people fall in love with Cape Coral during season. And then they move here and experience something entirely different. Starting in April and running through October, the snowbirds head back up north. Traffic evaporates literally almost overnight, and your favorite restaurant goes from a 45-minute wait to walk-in any night of the week. The city gets quieter, slower, and in many ways, more livable. Yes, it's hot. June, July, August in Cape Coral are genuinely warm and humid. And if you haven't experienced a Florida summer, you should know what you're signing up for before you get in. But locals will tell you, summer is when Cape Coral actually belongs to the people that live here, and the city just kind of exhales. The people who love Cape Coral the most are the ones who love both versions. They love the energy of the season, the restaurants are full, the community buzzing, the snowbirds bringing their enthusiasm for the lifestyle right alongside the year-rounders. And they love the summer quiet just as much. The slower pace, the reclaimed city, the feeling that you found something most of tourists never see. That dual experience is the insider's version of Cape Coral, and the relocators who come in knowing that both are out there are the ones who settle in, put down roots, and never really leave. So let's land this thing. 7 things today that nobody else is going to tell you before you move to Cape Coral. The canal system isn't one thing, it's 3, and access determines everything. Cape Coral isn't a planned community. It's a 110,000 lot patchwork that produces a neighborhood aesthetic unlike anything else. North and South Cape are genuinely different cities with different price points, different infrastructure, and a different feel. The UEP is a real financial assessment in North Cape that most buyers don't see coming, but it's manageable when you plan for it. This city was built for a specific lifestyle, and knowing whether you're that person is the most important question you can answer before you move here. There's no real downtown, and for most people who choose Cape Coral, that's totally fine. And the version of this city that you've seen in the highlight reel is the season version, most likely. The summer version is something entirely different, and most locals will tell you that it's one of their favorites. So you came in here looking for the truth, not the polished version, not the version designed to get you into a listing. You wanted to know what it is actually like, and I hope that we delivered that. If something I said today surprised you, good. That means that this video did its job. And now you know something real about Cape Coral that most people don't find out until they're already here. So 2 things before we go. First, if you haven't already grabbed our free Cape Coral relocation guide, go do that now. There is a link in the description. Second, if you're past the research phase and you want to actually talk, we're here for you. No pressure, no pitch, just a real conversation about whether Cape Coral makes sense for your situation, your timeline, and your life. All of our contact information is in the description as well. We'll see you in the next one.